Hey listeners, it's Paul Andriola here. Why not join our community at Small Cap Discoveries, where we offer our members direct access to some of the best microcap investment opportunities available. Our members are getting access to premium microcap financings, research reports, and direct access to management. Sign up today at www.smallcapdiscoveries.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today on our call, we have CEO Cristiano Veloso of Verde Agritech. Verde trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol NPK and on the OTC under AMHPF. The company is trading at $1.21 with roughly 50 million shares outstanding, or about a $61 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Hey, thanks so much, Trevor. Yeah, great to have Cristiano with us today. Verde Agritech, a company that is in the agriculture technology space, product space. I think a lot of things that we'll cover today. But Cristiano, great to have you here. I understand you have a presentation. I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Hi, Trevor. Thanks a lot for inviting us to present here today. I'm very excited to be sharing our story with you and your listeners. Verde Agritech PLC is a company I founded back in 2005. I took it public in Canada in 2007 in a very different market. Throughout a few years, we invested a lot of money in development of this project, this opportunity we're going to be presenting here today. And 2 or 3 years ago, we finally got to production, and we're growing rather fast. Our last results, we grew over 100%. And I hope that by the end of the presentation, people will be able to understand how or why we expect to carry on growing at a similar pace. Something else very important to mention, I own about 20% of the company. Since I started it, I've never sold a single share. I've only bought shares in the market. Also worth it mentioning that we potentially hold the record among other TSX companies of the one that was able to get to production and to profitability, issuing the least amount of shares, protecting our early shareholders. I say that's an unconfirmed because I was told that by a couple of shareholders who supposedly did some diligence, but I don't know if we do hold a record. If not, it's something we've been able to issue a very small amount of shares since the beginning, with a view really to protect shareholders and not necessarily bankers in our growth. As we begin the presentation, I would like to remind you that we have some forward-looking statements. Actual results might differ. And I would also like to tell you that if you're risk averse, you probably shouldn't be buying our stock. For that purpose, don't rely on anything on this presentation. On the left-hand side, there are some other important aspects, what we consider to be a shareholder investor aligned with our view. So, for example, if you're risk averse, you probably shouldn't be buying our stock when looking at what we're doing. If you just want to make a quick buck, if you're just for the short term, same thing. On the other hand, please join our journey if you truly believe we can be changing the world into a better place via investment. And if you really believe, if you really can understand why our success means we will transform our planet into a healthier place, as well as everyone's health. Starting the presentation, we have a purpose, which is it's not some BS on a corporate presentation. Everyone who joins the company, every day-to-day activity, it's something very strong in all of us. So we're here to improve the health of all planet and the people. We do that by improving soil biodiversity. When how we operate, what we sell, what we do, everything has this final opportunity, has this final objective, final purpose, which is to be improving soil biodiversity. And we supply salinity and chloride-free potassium specialty fertilizers directly to farmers for the same cost as conventional fertilizers. When we talk about carbon, when we talk about reducing emissions, buying an electric car, switching to solar energy, that isn't the true solution for climate crisis, for climate change. If you're really going to address the problem we face, we need to find ways to increase the amount, to extract carbon from the environment. And when you look at technologies, when you look at ways for you to extract carbon from the planet, the most efficient, the cheapest alternative, the most efficient one is no doubt biological carbon sequestration. Crops, be it commercial crops or forestry, they will be pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. That carbon becomes fuel. Over 40% of it is sent down to the roots, and that will feed soil microorganisms, which in exchange will bring minerals for crops to carry on growing. So those microorganisms, they make a carbon glue out of that fuel, making it their habitat in soil, storing carbon back into it. The big problem you have with that cheap mechanism of extracting carbon from the environment and into our soils, the big problem you have are potassium salt fertilizers, be it potassium chloride or potassium sulfate. That's why we like to call them soil biodiversity's #1 enemy. To give you an idea of the size of this problem, annually, over 60 million tons of potassium chloride are spread over agricultural soils globally, and that is the equivalent of nearly 500 billion liters of bleach as far as killing soil microorganisms is concerned. It's a massive impact, and we just have to stop this current mentality, out of sight, out of mind. We really need to effectively start looking for alternatives, be it investments, be it products, be it ways where we are protecting those soil microorganisms. It's not just because we can't see them. It's not just because, you know, just one spoonful of soil contains 10 billion different types of microorganisms that we can carry on destroying that with the problems you have from this attitude. We are a nature-driven technology company focusing on improving soil biodiversity through sustainable products that offers a unique combination of microorganisms and minerals carefully perfected to the specific needs of each crop. We have 2 products we've launched. One is K-Forte. That was our first product. It's been selling extraordinarily well in Brazil, accounts for over 90% of our sales. It's a source of potassium, silicon, magnesium. It's a gradual release fertilizer, so you're not losing nutrients with all the heavy rains. And this year we launched a second product called BAX, which adds all the nutrients to the mixture. So for example, it adds sulfur or boron, making it more, giving more alternatives to farmers as well. As part of the process of developing those products, we developed 4 technologies. So the first technology is micro-S technology, which is the one that allows us to convert inexpensive elemental sulfur into fertilizer grade sulfur using residue from the oil industry. The second technology we developed is Cambridge Tech, inspired by some work we did with Cambridge, which allows us to transform the mineral structure of the material we mine in Brazil and convert that into a gradual release potassium fertilizer. The third technology is 3D Alliance, which allows us to combine that mineral with other nutrients, as I said, like boron, phosphate, whatever the farmer needs. And the fourth technology is Innkeeper, which is a way for us to associate our mineral with urea, a source of nitrogen, reducing the emissions of nitrogen to the atmosphere in the form of ammonia. So those are the 4 technologies which are embedded in the 2 products we sell. We work with nature, so we have this area where it was a degraded pasture, and we, underneath that layer of grass, we found this phenomenal mineral. We drilled it. We have over 2 billion tons of this mineral. Virtually all of it underneath degraded land, degraded pasture land. And what we do is to borrow this mineral from nature. Then we process it mechanically using Cambridge Tech technology, and we give it back to farmers so farmers can go and spread the product back into their fields, back into the nature, replacing potassium chloride, allowing soils to recover, to capture more carbon and making our food more nutritious. And it's very big. So even though Brazil is the world's biggest importer of potash, even though Brazil is the world's second biggest consumer of potash, our mine is so big that it would last generations and still be able to supply all of the country needs. Current market for potash alone in Brazil at the moment is over 40 billion Brazilian reais, which would be around $8 billion US. So the market, our captive market, is worth currently about $8 billion, and we have enough reserves to supply all of it during more time than Paul and Trevor will be with us. It's a mine, but given all the approach we have in terms of environment, in terms of sustainability, how we approach it, we've even been given awards in terms of sustainability, in terms of how we've approached it. So we don't have any tailings dam, we don't have any nasty residue, we don't use anything chemically. So it's an example of sustainable mining, what Verde does, and we've been recognized for that. Our growth so far, if you look from when we began in 18, our CAGR is 186%. Our latest result shows a growth above 100%. And our gross margin is also very attractive. So the gross margin for 2020 was 62%. For the last quarter, our gross margin was above 70%. This table here, it illustrates our growth so far from when we began still with a pilot plant back in 2017 until what we're delivering in 2021. You can see from 19 onwards, the numbers split in quarters. It's a very seasonal business. So most of our sales will always take place Q3, and that's to do with climate, that's to do when farmers apply fertilizers. So you can see how we had originally a sales target for 2021 of 50 million reais, but we've increased this target twice so far this year, first to 55 and more recently to 60 million reais. The exchange rate to US dollars is about 5. So the current target is to sell this year around 12 million US dollars. You also have 2 other columns here, which come from our pre-feasibility study. That gave a couple of targets in terms of next production phases. So for phase 2, in terms of sales, the sales target was 580 million reais, so a bit more than $100 million. And then phase 3, about 2 billion reais, which would be about 400 million US dollars as part of our growth. The price for potash here was about, which is taken as a reference to price our products. The price was about $250 per ton. At the moment, the price in Brazil is about $600, significantly more than what we used in our PFS. We've been working since the beginning of the year in an updated PFS, which should be ready by the end of Q4, and we will be looking at a greater market share and of course updating the costs, which have more control now in terms of production costs, as well as updating the long-term sales price of potash. The PFS, if you look at the NPV, the net present value in Canadian dollars and divide it by our number of shares, you get to a $50 net present value. That NPV is based on, or is an after tax, and has an 8% discount rate. The delivery cost to Minas Gerais, or to, it's more than Minas Gerais. So this is an important slide. It's how much it costs for all the key players in the industry to deliver potash to the Cerrado region of Brazil, which would represent for us a market of around 20 million tons per year. At the moment, we're selling 300,000, 400,000 tons. So it would be a market significantly greater than what we're currently supplying. So you can see all the different players, and you have the cost curve, and you can see how Verde is unbeatable on a delivered basis. The nearest competitor is a small mine owned by Mosaic in Brazil, and then you have the other suppliers in the industry: Rocali, Belaruscali, SQM in Chile, Nutrien in Canada, Mosaic in the US, and the other ones. So we have this permanent competitive advantage being in Brazil, which gives us a lot of encouragement for challenging the status quo, challenging the main distributors, and really being very ambitious about how much we intend to be selling of our product in the coming years. So to finalize, before Paul, you all start asking questions, Trevor starts asking questions, why Verde, why now? We have a strong team. We also have a very strong board of directors. One of our directors, Alison Paulinelli, is the winner of the United Nations World Food Prize, very active in Brazil. He's the legend in the Brazilian agribusiness sector. He has been appointed for the Peace Nobel Prize for what the work has done in agriculture. The second reason you should be paying attention to what we're doing is that even though a lot of companies like to talk about ESG, about impact, about how they, making the environment a little bit better, when it comes to Verde, we can truly make a difference. We can truly make a difference, and we don't need to increase the cost to farmers to truly make this difference in extracting carbon out of the atmosphere back into soils where they belong. Thirdly, we have a truly scalable project and a track record in developing it in a non-dilutive way, because the mine, as I've explained, is right at surface, because of the technology we developed is simple. We can grow the business as fast or as slow as we want to dilute ourselves. And for the last few years, we've been able to do that in a very non-dilutive way, just by building those additional plants from accumulated cash flow and further debt, which is how we are currently funding our plant 2, which has recently begun construction and should be operational by early the second half of next year, and will significantly increase our production capacity already for next year. Fourthly, Brazil is the largest importer of potash, which seems to be a little bit sexier again after very unsexy Lukashenko started to beat people up in Belarus. People start talking about it. Of course, you had BHP deciding to go ahead and build with Jensen in Saskatchewan. So people are talking about potash again. The price nearly tripled since its lows, and there's scope for price stability. So it's natural there will be a renewed interest in this commodity. But what most people miss here is that what they're proposing now in terms of building a new potash mine in Saskatchewan would be the equivalent of Canada saying now that they're going to double down on oil sands, and they're going to triplicate oil production from oil sands or other oil projects. And the reason it's similar is because it is our understanding that given the impact chloride salinity has to soil microorganisms, it's not too far-fetched to think about a world where people will be refusing to apply that much salt, that much chloride into soils, and will have to look for alternatives. Finally, our production process, our mining techniques, everything is truly sustainable. We're really mining degraded pasture land, and that degraded pasture land is being converted back into forest as our mining progress. So we have one of the largest reforestation projects in Brazil alongside our mining activities. So thank you very much for your interest in Verde Agritech. I hope you all came to the end of the presentation. I hope you all gonna look for more information on what we're doing. We have a YouTube channel in English focused on investors, Verde Agritech PLC, where sometimes I go live. We have all our quarter material available there from the results, and I invite you all as well to go and have a look. So thanks again, Paul. Thanks again, Trevor, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Cristiano. That was great. I'll start with one question specifically about the product. Give us a sense of sort of how new this is. And the reason I ask that is, do you have to convince farmers or purchasers to buy this product over something that they're familiar with?
It's a new product for the Brazilian market. And yes, we have to convince farmers to switch from something they've been using for generations, and that has made them extraordinarily wealthy in Brazil just by using potassium chloride. I say it's new in Brazil because this source of potash is actually probably the oldest source of potash. It was started being mined in the United States over 2 centuries ago, was widely used. Then it became a little bit more of a niche product as the prices went up a lot because it was adopted by the organic sector in the US, and because the mines you had in the US after 2 centuries, they started being depleted. So we also export the product to Canada and to the United States. It's even available on Amazon. I'm going to send Paul a code, so all of you can go on Amazon and buy our product, get 5% off when you type in the voucher, test our product yourselves. Also, you have some other bigger companies in the United States and Canada that sell our product with their own brand. So it is a known product in North America. In Brazil, it's not. It's something new, as I said at the beginning of the answer to your question. And essentially how we sell the product, Paul, in Brazil is by turning to you. Let's say you're a farmer. I'll tell you, Paul, I know how successful you've been using potassium chloride. There is an alternative here. This alternative will not increase your costs. As a matter of fact, it will reduce your cost very slightly. You're going to get something for free as well. You're going to get some other free nutrients here, like silicon, manganese, magnesium. But above all, Paul, when you start farming, and for the last few years, we didn't have the science to understand the importance of soil microorganisms to agriculture. This is all changing, and this is changing because of companies like PacBio or Lumina that have come up with the technology that allows us to understand all the dynamics you have in the soil and everything those soil microorganisms can do and are doing for agriculture. So now, Paul, you have to stop destroying your soil microorganisms, your soil biome, because you're on the verge of change. You're on the verge of big change in terms of what this army you have underneath your feet can do for your crops in a number of ways. And that way, Paul, I don't expect you to switch 100% of your farm to our product. As a matter of fact, I'd rather if you didn't, because this isn't sensible, and I would be worried about you doing the same with another product and going bankrupt. The other product isn't as good as it should be. So, I don't want you to be taking big risks. But I do want you to start with a small area of a farm, and then you should be growing it as you feel more confident and you start seeing more results. And so that's essentially how our sales team sells the product. That's how our market team approaches it, and that's how we've been growing from very small amount back in 2017 with a pilot plant to the bigger numbers we're achieving this year, with even greater potential for growth next year. And essentially a lot of this growth is really farmers talking to other farmers about all the benefits they're seeing, fantastic feedback, fantastic stories in a number of ways.
Mm-hmm. So how does it, is one of the results like a better product or higher yields, or give me a better sense of what the farmers get other than possibly some lower costs and soil that I mentioned is, more robust? Does it affect the end result, the product, like the fruit or vegetable that's being grown?
It does affect. So we do have reports which go from the way of like people saying, oh, there was the drought, and the only area that survived was the area I applied your product. Reports, people saying, well, the area I used your product, the quality of the coffee was far better because I eliminated chloride from the soils. So we have that sort of reports all the time. But the important thing here, Paul, is that for you to buy our product, you don't need that because you're not paying for that. And that is the biggest problem other agri-tech companies have, because they need to come to you, Paul, and convince you that you're going to need to increase your cost by adding their product with the potential for having a better yields or having better benefits. So we don't need to sell that. We don't need to sell that. Right. And I come from a family in the farming sector, and so many times I heard from uncle saying, oh, if we were going to add all those products the salespeople come here offering us, I'll be producing 10 times more than I am currently producing, and my cost would be 100 times higher than it is. So we don't need to get into that complicated way of selling products, which is by increasing the cost to farmers.
Understood. So there's a lot of other potash producers that have been producing potash for years, a long time, and they, over time, the logistics are in place. But you're relatively new. What kind of logistics, whether it's train, transport, how do you get it to market? Maybe talk a little bit about the logistics issues of moving your product.
We literally sell to people next door, so we're already in the market, and we just sell by trucks. Okay,
so no need for any special logistics. You guys are basically at your customer's doorstep. Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so you did mention a little bit about this. You guys are expanding. You're getting into phase 2 and ultimately phase 3. But you do expect that the capital requirements for your expansion will be handled by your cash flow, or maybe talk a little bit more about how you're going to fund your future growth.
We were very proud to declare our independence from Bay Street a few months ago. We don't see ourselves needing or having to go back there, and all the growth should be supported from accumulated cash flow and some debt when it makes sense.
And maybe just describe your balance sheet a little bit. How much debt do you have? What's your working capital? What does that look like?
I will have to see if I have that on my deck on the presentation. I don't know from memory. Hang on. I don't have this number, but from the last quarter. But what I can tell you is it's pretty solid. It's very small amount of debt in local currency, which has a bunch of benefits, and pretty strong.
So clearly no capital issues right now as far as operations or expansion. Sounds like you're.
The questions nowadays are more like, when are you going to pay dividends? It's more like when are you going to start paying dividends, rather than what's your balance sheet like? So
yeah. Well, is that something? Well, I'll ask you then. Is that something you're considering right now?
It's not something I'm considering right now, paying dividends. It's something there will be a time for it. But as you can see from our margins, and how small the capital is for building new plants, and the availability of finance for that I think we're going to have to face that aspect pretty soon. I personally prefer buying back shares than just paying dividends. I think from a number of ways it's more efficient to buy back a bunch of shares and wait a little bit longer before start paying dividends. But that's a discussion for the board of directors and for another time. I probably shouldn't even be speculating that much at this point.
No problem. Always a good question to ask. Why don't we tell us more about yourself? What's your background? You mentioned a farmer, sort of a farming family, but maybe tell us a little bit more about your background.
I'm a very curious person who likes to study a lot, to learn from people. So over this journey, I learned a lot about agronomy, I learned a lot about geology, a lot about process engineering at some point, business development, marketing, sales. So my life has been really running the company. I started the company very young, at 24 years old. And when we went public at 27, I was told I'm the longest serving CEO on TSX, the longest serving CEO from the millennial generation. And I learned that from some amazing people that was part of the history of the company. Like our board of directors, for instance, is a phenomenal source of learning and expertise, experience. Alisson Paulinelli is a phenomenal person. It's hard to put in words. It's currently described as the most, how would I put it, the best, most successful, most admired Brazilian alive. And I was just lucky to be able to have these people alongside myself in this journey.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned earlier that you own roughly 20% of the company. Can you let us know if any other insiders, or what percentage insiders as a whole have in the company?
The total insider ownership is around, fully diluted, is around 25%. So there are some other directors, some other management. So for example, when we had the crisis for potash and Brazil and exploration, everything hit together. We were in deep trouble, and we all agreed to stop earning any salary in cash or board fees, and were paid in shares for a few years throughout in a time when there was major uncertainty, in a time when we didn't know if people were actually going to start buying the product, or even if they were going to come and repurchase the product, or they would get registered in a time of great uncertainty. We made that choice.
Gotcha. Why don't we take a couple questions that we've got from our listeners? And I want to remind everybody, if you've got a question you want me to ask Cristiano, please use the chat function. Here we go. Let's. Okay, so this. Okay. Competitive advantages. I think we've spoken about the product and what your competitive advantages are. But the other question is, what are your reinvestment opportunities? So I get clearly, you're going to reinvest to grow the facilities. But where else can you look? I mean, is there new technologies you want to bring in? Is there any other things that you can sort of reinvest into?
No, focus on what we've been doing and grow in scale. That number, which comes up with the $50 NPV, is based on a market share, which I like to think we can be more ambitious about this market share, and hopefully the new PFS will reflect that. And so that would be reinvesting in the business for growth. It's a big market in Brazil. I mean, just by looking at the current market, $8 billion, over 95% of that $8 billion annually is imported. So there's a lot to be done domestically, just from what we're doing, just by scaling it and learning from what we've been doing so far.
Lots of room to grow that. Okay, so here's a question from somebody who obviously knows the business a little bit. Recently, your CFO said that you were trying to encourage your customers to accept CIF versus FOB shipping in an effort to have better control over your shipping schedule. In the latest quarter, your shipping costs per ton were much higher than previous. Please elaborate.
So in last year, most of our sales were FOB. When you sell FOB, the farmer, of course, isn't paying for the transportation cost. And when it comes to a peak time like now, a farmer can struggle accessing good rates for freight, and make the whole logistic of the plant way more complicated in terms of how many trucks we can deliver in a given day from a physical point of view. So when we sell CIF, we can manage that process much more efficiently. and we can also make it easier for the farmer, so it's less one thing for them to worry about in a peak time. In terms of the increase in cost, it's natural as we grow that we also start selling to regions of Brazil which are further afield, further away from the plant. So we sell all the way to the south of Brazil, to the northeast, to the north, and the cost to deliver to those regions is greater than what would be, of course, next to the mine.
Okay, so following on that question, it's what was the cost per ton for shipping assumed in your slide for NPK to get farmers your product, and how does that compare with your recent quarter?
Good question. Let me open the presentation here. So for this slide, it was about $20-something per ton, the average transportation cost. And I don't remember what was the average transportation cost from our last financials.
I take it that that's something that we can expect will increase as, like you said, you get further and further afield, you're going to be, the cost to get this to that farmer down in, southern Brazil is going to be higher. So that should be factor going forward as your transportation, your costs are going to go higher.
When you look at the PFS, which is available on CDAR, it has the average transportation cost per phase. So for phase 1, the transportation cost, and then of course on phase 3, where you're supplying markets further away, the transportation cost is greater. And then it also shows where you're expecting to supply your product in each phase of the business. The new PFS is of course going to update all those numbers, provide more of a breakdown. But what I can say is that if you look at the numbers there, what it is or anything, it still shows us as the lowest delivered cost for the Brazilian market, with this permanent advantage. And it also shows or helps people to understand why we have such a big margin in our business.
Understood. Okay, here's a question. What activities are required to achieve the $50 per share, and what risks could prevent you from achieving this?
The $50 per share on the MPV is based on a price which is lower for potash and a market share which I believe can be greater than what it is. So I would expect for the new PFS for you to have a far greater number than what you currently have in terms of potential NPV. What is needed to achieve that is to carry on building additional scalable facilities. It gets to a point when you need to have a rail because, when you're going above, let's say 10 million tons, then you need to be taking this by rail from the mine to distribution centers. That CapEx is in the PFS as well. It's a big chunk of CapEx on when you go to phase 3. You need additional environmental license to carry on increasing your production capacity, but above all, you need to carry on convincing farmers and more farmers to switch from potassium chloride to our product.
Great. Okay, and lastly, there's a couple questions. Could you sell the product to North America at attractive rates? If you're finding it difficult to, it says if you find it difficult to grow in Brazil, which I don't think you're finding, but how competitive are you as far as pricing if you're moving your product into North America?
We're not competitive at all selling the product to North America. When we sell the product to North America, farmers that buy the product in North America, they don't buy it because of its potassium content. They buy it for everything else it does to the soil and to crops, in addition to potash. That's what they pay for. And that's significantly more than what Brazilian farmers. So Brazilian farmers are paying At the moment, about a tenth of what North American farmers pay for our product.
Wow.
And Brazilian farmers only pay for potash. So it just helps to understand how much more value there is in everything else the product does.
Okay, so what is the lowest potash price you can compete with if the market were to drop again?
That's a good question. When you look at a cash, which is this slide, let me share the screen again. So when you look at this slide, you can see that our delivered cash cost is around $170. So providing potash prices stay delivered in Brazil above $170, we can essentially break even. But I tell you, if potash prices come down to $170, Belarus is going to fall apart. Saskatchewan is going to be in deep trouble. Mosaic is going to be in huge trouble. K+S it's going to be in enormous trouble, and IPI equally huge trouble. So it's not a scenario. I think they went too far now with this potash price at $600 Brazil. You know, people even talking about $700. I think that's a mistake. I think that's greed. We don't need to be making that much money. It's just crazy. I hope the industry will come back to some sort of normality, which I think is something around $300 per ton, $350. You know, if it's $350 for us, we're still making tons of money. Guys like K+S, IPI, Mosaic might not be making just as much money as we are making, but for us, it's a
healthy market
price.
We have one last question from the listeners here. The Brazilian government launched a plan in January to become self-sufficient in fertilizer versus the current importation of 90%. Will NPK play part in that?
It's already making a big part on that. It's already making a huge part on that. The difference is we don't need much help or any help from the government. There is another project in the Amazon rainforest, which has a major nasty environmental impact, and it's also in an Indian reserve. So it's a project where they're struggling. They've been struggling for years with a bunch of problems, and I think it's more to try to help a project like that with those gigantic hurdles rather than what we're doing.
Listen, where do you see the company 5 years from now?
It's a good question, Paul. I see us really fulfilling our purpose. So I really see us increasing the nutritious benefit of food across the globe without adding costs. So for example, Brazil has such a big share of global food exports that every day you're going to eat at least one thing growing in Brazil. One is, people say that 1 in each 5 items you eat came from Brazil. And by switching to our product, because of all the other nutrients we have in our product, which go for free, we have the periodic table there, you end up eating much more nutritious food. Because we protect the soil microorganisms, those soil microorganisms are also essential in converting those nutrients into food. So you're essentially eating healthier food without knowing about it and without having to pay anything more for that. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is no doubt the amount of carbon we can help capture from the environment. It's millions of hectares cultivated in Brazil, currently with millions of potassium chloride being spread all over those fields. killing the soil microbiome. And as soon as we start replacing that, we start allowing the soil biodiversity to do what it does better than anything else in terms of carbon capture. So that's where I see the company in 5 years playing a major recognized role in addressing two of the biggest problems our society face. One, what they call hidden hunger, the fact you're eating food thinking that's nutritious when it really isn't, hidden hunger, and two, carbon capture, climate change. So that is our purpose.
Fantastic. So as investors, what do you think should be the key catalysts or metrics we should be watching for to know that you guys are executing your business plan?
I think it's growth. How much we keep growing, or we being able to hit the targets we're setting for ourselves. I think that's the key metric. But you should look at it. The more product we sell, the more good we bring into the environment, not just the more cash we bring into the bank.
Mm-hmm. And, we're about to wrap up here. Cristiano, is there anything, what are the key message or the key takeaway that you really want everybody who's listening today to walk away from or walk away with?
Well, just don't invest in the company if you only care about trading the stock, if you only care about short-term gains, if you really only care about, there are plenty of other companies. There are thousands of companies out there listed. Go and find another place. If you want to look something where we can truly make a difference, and we're working with a team fully committed on making a difference, and by the time the more successful we are making a difference, the more money we bring into the company, then I think you should be following us. And it will be great to have you on our journey, as part of our journey.
Fantastic. Cristiano, if somebody wants more information, you mentioned a YouTube channel, but also where's your website? Where can they get information?
www.verde.ag. If you want a shortcut to the investor page, is investor.verde.ag. But do go and check our YouTube channel. The last results, quarterly results, I answered about 70 questions. It lasted nearly 3 hours. There's plenty of material there for due diligence. Do make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification, because sometimes I go live as well, and we want more like-minded people. I think one of the biggest mistakes, Paul, CEOs make, companies still make, thinking every company can be good enough for every type of investor. That creates a lot of frustration for management, boards, and especially investors. So we're very clear as far as who we believe will be joining us for a great ride, and who we just think is better off following a different type of company. I just wish I knew that when I was 24 and I started the company here. It's a shame it took so many years to learn that.
We all learn this way. Exactly. Well, listen, this has been great, Cristiano. It's been a pleasure to get to know a lot more about the business. I wish you continued success in driving something that I think clearly is good for humanity in a couple of ways. So, continued success. And listen, we look forward to catching up to you in the future. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks for everyone who's watching it now live and who's watching on your YouTube channel. Thank you a lot. Stay safe.
Thank you.